Active, I'm coming to you with a video that will be a standalone piece for the YouTube audience that basically begs one specific question, which was, what if humanity's sole purpose is to continually pollinate consciousness? And the thought process that led me to that wonderful question. And it came about as an observation of kind of the world setting that we're in, the stage that has been set for our evolution. And I kind of wanted to walk you guys through the process of how I came to that and the layers upon layers to unpack it in a way that made sense to a wider audience. And so basically this whole thing began with my own spiritual journey of exploration, and many of you have been following me over the years, understanding that it has been quite a process of introspection and inward focus in order to understand the grander scheme of things. And last week, or I should say on Monday, I released a piece on LinkedIn, a written form, that basically was speaking to a concept and idea that comes from the Theosophical Society and a presentation that William Meter had given in Brisbane, I believe, on the 8th. And I wanted to bring that particular lecture to the audience on LinkedIn so that they could see what the concept was that lay underneath the surface of what they were talking about. And in the lecture, Monsieur Meter was talking specifically about the humanities' evolution as it grows. And what I had done with the written piece is explain to my readership that to really understand sometimes the world stage or kind of the developmental stage that we as a people are in, we can often look inwards to our own experiences in order to ground the energy and better understand what it is that we are witnessing. And what I basically was speaking to was that humanity is facing its adulting process, the process by which I had spoken to earlier this year and into last year, where I made a point where society has gone to a position where it's either growing into a high school phase of the adolescent turmoil type of clickbait type of thing, where people are like tribe-based and really not evolving, towards another section of the population who on a soul level is moving towards the collegiate master's degree type of program. And I had prefaced everything by saying, in the year that has come till now, that we were kind of going through a dry run from 2020 to 2024, and that we were now facing the vote, the cosmic vote, that would be laid out this year. And so in that context, what I was doing when I was introducing my readership to Mr. Meter and the Theosophical Society lecture was I was grounding the energy for them to understand what we are witnessing from an eternal landscape, which is, many of you remember what it was like individually as beings to go from that high school experience where you're still in your parents' home and you have this regimented schedule, someone's accountable for your well-being and so forth, to then being thrown into a collegiate experience where you're now leaving the nest and you're having to take full accountability for your own life. And the power play and the dynamics and the turmoil that went during that phase of our own evolution, and then parallel view it to what's happening on the world stage, where some people are more high school driven, cliquish, bullyish, trying to take other people down, canceling each other out because they're not at the right place or the right vibration to meet at the table. And so you're playing that out. And then you can parlay that to what you were going through as you were exiting high school, and you start to realize that your clique or whatever group you were in wasn't who you were, and so you had to go find your own identity. And so you left the nest and started moving out towards different philosophies, theologies, and different studies. And then you went to college and you realized that a lot of the foundation of what you thought you knew was not real, and that you were now being exposed to a landscape that was brand new to you. And in that, the inner turmoil that then could happen when you would go home for a summer break or whatnot, and you would run into the same people who had not left the high school experience and who were still kind of in that high school mentality, whereas you had moved on into a higher perspective where you were not judgmental, but you realized there was a bigger divide happening between you and some of your old friends. You had grown and they didn't keep pace. Not that they had to, but you were just in different places. And you kind of begin to see the model, the stage that's set for humanity as the soul brought up of all its parts. And you start to understand the divide that's happening between the two realms of consciousness and basically how it's going to have to work together in order to move forward. So it's a really great example of a really well-articulated lecture that William Meter had done with my own personal take on it, so as to help the audience that was reading through my portal and being introduced to Mr. Meter, they would understand the concept of looking in order to understand without, right? And so one of the things that has come from that is the deviation and the separation between mentalities or evolutionary stances. And in that process, we're seeing a lot of people ascend out of the cancel culture, out of the toxicity of bullying, away from certain portals that are all about, beating people down and canceling each other. Like all of that stuff is very high school. It's very lower density vibration. Not to cast judgments on them, but to really point out that it's kind of like, what we did when we were in school, like, oh, you come from the wrong side of the tracks, or oh, you're this color or this, you know what I mean? It's very high school is the best way to explain it. And so as a soul group, though, as a humanity, we can't stay in that place if we're to evolve. And so those of us who are in the collegiate experience are now branching into theosophy, esotericism, different forms of faith, still grounded with whatever house we come from. Many of you are Christian, some of you are Muslim, some of you are Jewish. You have the foundation of stone, but you're now incorporating different aspects of a different concept, and you're allowing different light into your sphere of consciousness in order to evolve you forward. But what we neglect in doing that is that we're looking at it from an individual standpoint. And the point of this piece, as we move into where I'm going with it, you'll understand that it's the same principle for a collective, for a group of people. Because in the college experience, many of you recall pledging a fraternity, pledging a sorority. Many of you decided your major. You decided what you wanted to do for a master's degree. You set your sight on something specific that spoke to you intrinsically. And though many of you were lost in the process, you were still fine-tuning yourself to see where you fit, which is exactly what the collective consciousness is doing within itself. It's basically tying up loose ends in a way where groups of people are being pulled together that have matched vibrations, matched interests. They don't want to be down in the dirt, in the mud, and name calling. You're now branching out to something much more complex, which is how do we make sense of chaos? How do we harmonize chaos? Which was a perfect bridge point to introduce my readership to the esoteric belief that William Eder was speaking to. But after I left that particular piece, I was sitting in the headspace of how to best explain it from a spiritual lens to a wider demographic that was built with people who might understand it in a more grounded facet. And I came up with something interesting. So let's say that you have a vision for humanity, that you're trying to get them unstuck, right? Because we're so polarized that you have to bring the poles towards each other in order to move them forward. How would you do it? And I was thinking about it from the lens of the great architect, whoever you call God, Allah, or whoever it is. And how would you then bring a vision to life that would propel the species collectively towards a better world, towards a better future? And I suddenly thought of a director and kind of the way that we do Hollywood productions, where a director has a vision and he brings it to the table and he typically writes it, and then he sends it to the studios or to the producers, and someone backs the idea, puts all the energy into it, and then they begin the they begin the process of picking the right people who can bring that vision to life. And I started to run the parallel between the great architect and society and his vision for humanity, because we believe that we are in the mind of all. And I started to realize that there was a great parallel between the two that would help humanity better understand how to bring the adulting process vision to life, how to move the collective into a unitive standpoint in order to face the adversity that comes with adulting. And so I started to look at the process from a director or Hollywood production or as a play production, and I started to better understand the layers of complexity that go with bringing humanity and all of love and light forward, how to move things into a vision that comes alive in the day-to-day operations that we live. So I thought about the great architect coming up with an idea of how to move the species forward and presenting that idea to the producers or backers, which we would interpret in spiritual terms, because I'm a spiritualist, as the hierarchies and the elders and the ascended masters, and then allowing them to incorporate their skill set as part of the production to bring that vision to life. So you could say something like the Buddha says, well, we need much more compassion and we need a much more centered focus. So that gets added to the plot line. Then Empress Cytherea, or whoever you believe the divine feminine, Miss Sophia, says, okay, but I want a romantic edge to it. So you throw in divine unions. And then you say, well, we need opposition. So how do we frame that work? And so each individual, elder, master, patron saint, archangel, or angel, whatever you believe in, throws their expertise at the table into the mix, and they formulate a plan to bring that vision to life. But then comes the interesting part. You have to cast the parts to be played. And you have to make sure you have the right beings, or avatars in this case, to bring their vision to life. So you do a trial and audition phase, where you basically take a panel of the human species and you set them into a maze from which they don't know what they're doing, and you put them against the harshest of odds, 2020 to 2024, and you see how well they do under pressure. And in that process, you are basically feeding them aspects of their experience that can be brought to the role they will be playing in front of the world. And you vet them, and you dwindle down the list to a group of people, a group of beings whose avatars best align with whoever the higher up is. I always go to the archangels, you know this. So it's like, let's say that Archangel Gabriel is the narrator of what's to happen moving from 2025 through 2027. He would need an avatar, one of his avatars, that is in the most alignment, who builds the least resistance to the role or the robe, the dress, the costume that they're going to wear, and has to be able to then trust that avatar to be able to pull it off. And so each individual beacon of light, whoever the master or elder or teacher dresses a student, then goes about the process of ensuring that whoever is the best aligned avatar, which would be any one of us, because if you're an esoteric faith person, you understand that we belong to ashrams or departments, for those of you who are more Catholic or whatnot. You understand that you have functionality in your life purpose that fulfills a greater destiny on behalf of the whole. And your quest is to figure out what part you're playing in the production of life, right? Because they say life is a stage. You're a player on a stage. You're either a player or a pawn. All of these things reference this greater concept of putting on a production. And in that, you cast the right people in the right roles, and you base it on how they bring the character to life. But in a 3D setting, you would have to have people who have the life experience that would serve the end of what you're trying to accomplish, right? So just think like a casting director. Those of you who are in Hollywood, you understand this. You go, you audition, you bring your authenticity, you bring the role to life, but you do it based from yourself. Only in this case, you understand the world stage to be on a soul level, where the soul is actualizing itself as its character on display in order to accomplish a mission. And in this case, it's to bring humanity through the adulting phase in order to get them into the Aquarian alignment, taking them from the Piscean age, which if you really think about, is the phase of angst. It's the prepubescent phase where you're suffering and you're uncomfortable and you're taught all of this stuff and you're rallying against your parents and you have all these rebellions and wars and things that you're battling internally. And so it makes sense that as you move to the Aquarian age, the age of wisdom, that you're now entering the collegiate experience, where many of you will finally get your master's degree. And maybe, if you are of faith, join the ascended masters or the other elders. But it's a process that you must learn, and you accrue it through action, through the work that you do. And what do actors do if not prepare for the role? Only in this case, the actors, the avatars, may not have known what they were auditioning for, which is brilliant. And part of evolution does not tell you where it's going, it just gets you there. And if you are in the running for a role, then you have been running to meet that role, where opportunity makes preparation. And so in that process, many of you unknowingly have been proving yourself in alignment with your higher nature, and that higher nature is now part of a bigger plan. But how do you then work with bringing that vision to life, if not by bringing those individuals towards each other? and the casting process then taking shape to then begin the rehearsal process. Now, what's interesting is that depending on what the budget or the production is around it, sometimes many of the actors won't even know they've been cast until they appear at the table read. And this is important for you spiritualists. You've heard for a very long time, I might be setting a table for you, or I have set a table for you, meaning you have a seat at a table. And many of us have glorified it into meaning all this other stuff, when in reality, it could just be a table for you at the reading of whatever the next leg of the journey is. And as you've gone through your journey and through your trials and tribulations, you didn't know that you basically were reading the script. You just didn't know it. Because the only people who would get the script and understand what they're reading are those who did the work and the homework. Because every actor does the same thing. Every creative does the same thing. When they get the script, they focus on it, they break it down, they do all of the different things, they figure out the different nuances, how they're going to present this, how they're going to do that, knowing that on the day, they're just going to have to do it on the fly. But they have to understand the Bible of it in order to bring the character to life. And when they get cast meaning multiple things spiritually, when you cast from your third eye, if we are in the mind of God, then you understand that you are a vision and you are a thought form in motion that is basically working out a thesis, either a master's thesis or a dissertation for a doctorate. And you are the thought form in motion in a third dimensional setting. But it's important to remember one thing about third dimensionality. A third dimensional being can only see three-dimensionally. It cannot see the parameters of the matrix or whatnot. Its lens is to be ingrained into the simulation, into the situation, basically being on set and only seeing the set for what that is. So you have to understand that when we're talking about this, that we are specifically talking about a role that you are set to play that you may not have known you have been training for your entire life until it's brought upon you and you are brought together with the other actors or the other souls in their avatars that are well aligned, brought forth to do something on behalf of humanity in a way that plays outwardly. And so you then understand how you would get a species towards one another by using those avatars or those actors, those souls that are realizing their souls, not just bodies, and now in full alignment, doing and functioning in the role that they were meant to do. Basically being cast because they did the work. They weren't aiming because they had no idea. Did you know that this might be all a big stage? Of course. We've always heard the world is a stage. But what if it actually has more depth to that, to the soul who's fine-tuned to understand the play and then functions in that way because they weren't seeking the role. They just are that being. So from that context, you then bring the characters together and they begin to do something as a collective, forming a collective consciousness that has been appointed to serve out a specific function that helps set the parameters and the stage production so as to bring that world alive. In this case, our world. Back from stagnation, back from the darkness, back from corruption and greed. You set a stage with parameters and you make it very clear to the production company what's at play. So if you want to look at it from a production standpoint, when you set a stage, you set the parameters to the stage and you understand what the complexity is to what the actors will be in. And so if you want to look at it from a spiritual lens, at the top of the frame is, let's say esoterically, the White Lodge. At the bottom of the frame is the Black Lodge. To the extreme left is the Luciferic energy, which is the fallen angels, those who are closest to light and don't really understand world suffering and try to make people as perfected as they can. And on the far right, you bring the more Hasatanian energy, the more materialistic stuff. This is like higher concept stuff, but understand, guys, I speak in what I'm reading and learning. So Hasatanian is basically the satanic part, but in the greater concept of the universe is more like materialistic, greedful, and all that stuff. With the Black Lodge being the worst of humanity. People who relish in corruption and hypocrisy and relish in torturing people and stuff like that in their own way through ego, narcissism, and so forth. Like they're the most condensed, dense form that is miserly and really wants to hurt other people. Think Hitler. Like that's a really great example of the Black Lodge in motion. Then you have the White Lodge, which believes in freedom and helping people understand that they have to do the work and reward them with more knowledge and so forth, with whatever their abundance is, for the work that they do for right relations. So you have a parameter spiritually of the spiritual wars that people are talking about in the background. And then you frame it in the human basic form, in like the midsection, with the more political. So let's say that the top of it, if we're doing in the same alignment where the white and the top layer would be humanity is at the top of the frame, the independent beings that are up for grabs, if you will. And then at the very bottom, you have the corrupted government as their opposing end and kind of the greedful and kind of trying to, condemn them, so to speak, and control them. And then to the far left, you have the extreme liberals, and on the far right, you have the extreme Republicans. And of course, you guys know that I don't vilify any of these people in this particular stage. I feel like everybody's fulfilling a role, but it doesn't mean I have to like them. And so the thing is, you understand the framework from which the story is being told in two parallel ways. One is you understand the spiritual aspect to the play, and then you understand on a lower level the political aspect to it. But if we go back to our collegiate experiences, is that not what we experienced as individuals when we were growing up? Where we were indoctrinated into whatever house we belonged to as a young person. We went to church every weekend or whatever it was. And then when we got to college, we began to embrace other philosophies and other theosophies through school in order to get a more well-rounded education, is what we call it. And the same thing with our political affiliations. If you grew up in a really, really Republican family, and then you went to college and you realized that might not be in the right alignment for you, you started to kind of dabble with more Democratic stuff. And then some of you would find the balance between the two and would be more independent. All of that is now playing out on a collective consciousness level. The exact same parameters that we have gone through as individuals now being represented on the stage as a whole. And understanding where we fall into alignment on that my hair is distracting me. Falling into alignment and understanding where you are really helps you then ground your energies when the dominoes begin to fall around you and you see kind of the chaos that's breaking loose. And one of the great things about the piece that William Meader had done with the lecture in Brisbane for the Theosophical Society was he had made a comment that that it is through the chaos where the anecdote will come from. It is from the melee in which you will understand what's happening and where the kernel of truth will then set you free. And so if you understand it from a stage production standpoint, you may understand a greater concept of the great architect. He knows how to stage a scene. He knows how to make it vivid. He knows that the universe is expansive. And if we are indeed the players on the field, then we are like the bees pollinating consciousness. We are the motion of thought incarnated. Meaning, let's say that Socrates and Plato are having a conversation, a debate at the highest of realms. Let's say that they're at a roadblock, that they can't really figure out how something would work in a third dimensional setting. Well, they send it down as an impulse to humanity, and those that receive it then work through that particular train of thought and either prove or disprove an idea or thought. And each of us do it every day of our lives. We serve different students, souls at different student levels, all the way up the academy, right? And we, as their avatars, are also mirrors of that. And so when we walk through our life, people experience us at the same level that the souls acknowledge each other, because they understand that we have a higher concept of how things might work in a matrix setting. Because again, even a 2D, even a second dimensional being would only see second dimensionally. It wouldn't see the third dimensional context of something. And just in the same, a third dimensional being cannot perceive a fourth dimensional setting. And just like the fifth, you know what I mean? Like, so it keeps expanding. And you can always study this when you do like quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement. You start to understand the fourth dimension a little bit clearer. And if you're gifted with sight and the ears to hear, then you become exposed to other things. But that takes training, it takes study, it takes investment. Almost like, what was it, Pythagoras, or was it Hermes Trismegistus, who had the seven liberal colleges, or the seven liberal studies And what are liberal studies if not studies of humanity and the arts and all of those things? Everything having an artistic flair into what it is. So if you can think of it from that standpoint, you can understand the great architect as the great director, and that we, as his students, are his actors on stage. And if you are an adept or whatnot, you understand how framing works and what caricatures and archetypes represent in any frame. And this is where it gets more grounded for those of you who are following me. When you cast a project into 3D, you tend to have players that you know, famous people that have names and are known for their skill set. And when they enter the scene, they typically get top billing. And then you have other players that are up and comers, and you mix them together in order to create something wonderful, something magical. And then, so you understand the concept of having souls that have specific coding or title or prestige at a higher level, that when they enter a frame in the earthly plane, everyone stops and looks at that person, usually slightly confused, knowing that there's someone with the it factor, but not identifying, not able to identify it, if not at the same level as they are. Meaning, have you ever noticed that when you see celebrities walking a red carpet, you will always see the A-list celebrities immediately notice each other, but you will see that more B celebrities or newbies may be overlooked, but they have an immediate registration of each other because of their inner circles, right? The same would happen as above, so below. So at the higher level, there are souls that are dressed as, the teachers dressed as students, currently in the Earth Academy, helping facilitate and bring this to life in their own way. And other adepts or other advanced students, immediately when that person enters the frame, goes, oh shit, is that who I think it is? Yep, it is. Oh, I should go say hi. No, I shouldn't say anything. Oh my God, what do I do? They have that reaction at a soul level. And so understand that that's what happens in a frame. So if you understand that, let's say that you're going through a major transition for humanity, and you have teachers dressed as students on the ground. Now, those who are cleared to know who those teachers are will immediately go, oh shit, oh, that they're really here. And others will completely be oblivious and just think they're wacko. They will think like, oh my God, this person's just nuts. But the reality is, for the great architect, the director, and the production, everyone knows who that player is when they enter a frame. And it immediately changes the dynamic of the play or the production immediately. Suddenly there's a name on set and everybody responds to it as such. And those who don't know what it is still will understand that that's a key player. So we as the students in the academy need to become more aware of teachers dressed as students with respect and to give them the space, because when they enter the frame, they are serving a function within the frame to change the dynamic intrinsically. And if you believe in the matrix, it makes sense. If you're doing a production to a green screen, the actors are interacting with each other, and the extras and everybody is interacting as though they can see the world that's painted around them. But there are people dressed in green screen. There are beings that you can't see to the camera lens because they're not in 3D. And so they disappear to the ambiance in the background. And you understand then there's so much more going on to the universe, right? There's only, what is it? It was only 5% of the universe's atomic energy. 95% of it, we can't register. And everybody's running around trying to figure out why. Well, because we're in a 3D eye set. Our perspective is driven towards the third dimension. So it could be, I mean, hypothetically in a theoretical philosophical conversation, that there are energies that surround us that exist like we do, but we can't see because they're not costumed the way we are. Which brings us to an interesting philosophical and theological question that I want to leave you with. One of the things about productions, when you're trying to move a storyline along, is that the players have to be in the right costume for who they're going to be playing. So what real difference is there between a soul descending down to earth and picking up the wardrobe that best suits their purpose? For example, I've noticed, and I'm sure I've said this many times, that Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, loves to show up in the physical world as a homeless person. He did it to Muhammad, he does it a lot. And the reason I figured out was very simple. He wants to be in the background. He doesn't want to be seen while still being seen. And if he appears, he's testing you. He's asking you a question. He's trying to give you advice or guide you. Fine. But he wants to see the truth of the person. Now, what's interesting is that he then is dressed in the robes to play the part. And only the true adepts can look deep into his eyes and go, holy shit, that's fucking Gabriel. Look busy. Same with Michael. A truly adept person who sees Michael into a frame in whatever the outfit is, reminiscent of what happened with the big JC, anybody who's a believer can see the big JC. But when the big JC, remember when he comes back in resurrection, Mary Magdalene didn't know who it was. She hadn't mastered that yet. And he was slightly bemused by the fact that she didn't know it was him. The same thing could happen in other places, right? Obviously, no one is as important as the big JC. Don't everybody come for me. We're making an example to a point. Don't get all in a huffy. But the point is, you understand the concept that in resurrection, if you are granted immortality, let's say, that you change your outfits according to what your purpose is in whatever role you're serving and whatever the stage has been set for development. And so understand that complexity so that when you understand the life that you've gotten, that's part of your coursework, right? As a basic individual person, we know we're in the Great Earth Academy, and the struggles and the hurdles and the trials and tribulations that we have come from is our learning journey. It's the path we were given. And so the family we're born to, the color that we are, the hair that we have, what our racial makeup is, are all genetic markers that are exhibited through the costume that we're wearing. Just like when we leave the earth, if you are an adept or an ascended master, you get your rainbow garb, which means you disappear from the world. They can't see you. But you're in a dress, you're in a costume. And it's the same principle when you incarnate into the physical world. You are the souls on stage. You are here proving your higher self's theory, thesis, master dissertation, whatever it is that it's trying to gain information or knowledge on. You are acting it out in a physical form, testing the theory against physicality in the third dimensional setting. So understand then, when you're thinking about it individually, you can then contextualize it to a group endeavor, what it might look like as a collective consciousness. Because the journey to understanding the realm of consciousness, to understanding the universe, begins by understanding you are a microcosm of it. And you hold all the keys that you need if you just do the work to understand who you are. Because then you can start to begin to see God in other people. And in that, you begin to gain a skill set that helps you better understand that the life lessons you have had may play out in a group dynamic. And when you start to see that happening, as the dominoes begin to fall around you and the chaos ensues, you see where the chaos is leading you. And you man your posts, you light your beacon, and you stand there as best as you can, and you roll with it. Because you unknowingly have been trained this entire time to fulfill whatever the role is you're meant to play now as we make this transition forward as a collective consciousness. I've said it before and I've said it again, and I'll say it again. Humanity cannot stay stagnant. We cannot go backwards because it's a retardation of energy. It means that we're devolving, not evolving. And what are bees if not pollinators? They help Gaia grow. They help it expand continuously, which is where I came with the question. What if humanity's sole purpose is to pollinate consciousness, to test and mold and prove facts from fiction, resolve debates, and actualize thoughts and ideas from the mind of God in physical form? And then B, aspects of the all observing itself as we operate. Now talk about a director on a mammoth proportion. Talk about understanding the complexity of faith in a way that makes sense of the hierarchical structure, right? An actor is the vessel that is testing the theories. Its oversoul, the higher mind, is the one actualizing it and trying to get you to navigate in right alignment. But if you don't even acknowledge him, then you're not even on the stage. Or at least you're not aware that you're on the stage. But if you're an actor in right alignment, when you have fine-tuned your instrument, you realize that you are serving something greater than yourself. And then you follow the chain of command up and you go, oh, I get it. Okay, so then obviously there's a costume designer. There is a PA. There is the camera operators. There is this, that, and the other. And then you have the producers. And then you have the studio. And then you have and you understand hierarchy in a much more grounded manner. So though it may seem super simplistic to you, there's a wealth of knowledge available to the student who wants to understand that life really is a stage. We are learning to be co-creators in something masterfully done, and in the process are being granted an invitation to walk with the great architect. How did this all come to be? Well, if you play your part and you do your research and you audition at the right time and all the things come together, then suddenly the world opens up to you and you realize that your entire life has prepared you for this moment in time, for this crucial moment of transition where humanity grows up. And growing up is hard to do. It requires a lot of turmoil, a lot of introspection, and you lose a lot of people along the way who do not grow with you at the same pace you did. So understanding the inward journey helps you understand the external stimuli in a way that helps you be more present day to day in order to understand that what you're seeing is yourself at a group level. And though you don't agree with most of the things that they are doing, you understand that you didn't agree with it when you were in junior high or high school. You had your own morals and ethics, and that comes from a bigger impulse than you. So depending on what department you work for, depending on what your skill set is, everyone is doing something on behalf of all. So understanding it from something as simple as a Hollywood production may help you better understand the complexity that comes from chaos as it harmonizes into hope. And that process is a journey where we stand together, my friends, and we understand that in the end, we are all God's children playing in the yard, and we all have keys to understanding the great mystery of what's happening around us every day. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope this made sense. Bye.